Hello everyone. So today we're going to be looking at Proverbs 6 verses 16 through 19. And it occurred to me as I was looking at the videos that I already uploaded, the text is very small. I mean, it looks fine to me as I'm, looking at it on my computer. But for you guys, it's incredibly tiny. You can hardly read it. So I enlarged the screen, so hopefully you can read it better on your screen. But it reads as follows: There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked schemes, feet that are quick to rush into evil, a false witness who pours out lies, and a person who stirs up conflict in the community. Now, in this video, we're only going to look at 2 points. I just have 2 points for you, and a total of 3 cross references that we can look at. So, the first point is there's a hierarchy of sin, and you can see that in the very first verse. Let's go back and look at it. There are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. Now, God does not like sin, period, right? He cannot, his character cannot, does not allow him to condone any sin whatsoever. However, all sin is not equal. There are certain sins that are greater than others. Certain sins that God characterizes as worse than others. And I think that, you can even see that if you go back and look at the Old Testament, the law stipulated certain punishments or repercussions that were to be rendered as a result of certain sins. And those punishments ranged from you could lose, we often refer to the principle, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, whatever. That was real. You could suffer that consequence, or even worse, you could be stoned to death, for example. And so that suggests that even in the Old Testament, you saw that there was a difference, between, for example, I don't know. I'm not. I'm trying not to make up stuff here because I don't know, specifically the things that warranted certain punishments. But I guess, for example, if you worked on the Sabbath, right? You probably weren't going to be stoned for that. But you would be stoned for example, committing adultery, right? The story in John 8, where the woman who was found to have committed adultery was about to be stoned, but Jesus said, "Him who was without sin cast the first stone." And what he was saying was that under the new covenant that he represented, mankind did not have the authority to render death unto anyone because they themselves, in their sinful nature, warranted death, or merited death upon themselves. And so he was trying to make a point there. But there is a hierarchy of sin, and we have to recognize that. That doesn't mean that we are just going to commit certain sins and, as opposed to others, we should avoid all sin. But we should just really be mindful of how God views certain things. And of course, as we progress in time, we notice that society does not view things in the way that it used to view things. And so it's okay to lie, I suppose, under certain circumstances, right? We have a much more liberal understanding of transgression in general. And that's a trend that's going to continue as time progresses. We will no longer have philosophy in the way that we have traditionally had it. So that's the first point. The second point would be I can't type to save my life. So, one thing that I've noticed is that there's a difference between being righteous and being evil, in terms of your identity, shall we say. And this is something that is this is a distinction that's made throughout the the wisdom books in particular, and it's all when I noticed it, it was very intriguing to me. But it's very clear. It's very clear. Once you pick it up, you recognize, okay, so we're all sinners, right? However, there are people who have allowed themselves to be corrupted by sin and are therefore considered to be evil. And as a result of that, they are in a condition that is almost beyond redemption, because they have allowed themselves to reach that point. And I think that correlates with the idea of your heart being hardened, because you have sinned with no remorse or regret. Now you are able to commit greater sins and still have no remorse. And so it just kind of, you start to sort of get on a slippery slope there, and uh, it's hard to come back from that, right? It's hard to be restored to righteousness when you have allowed yourself to uh, deteriorate to such a degree. And so we're going to look at two verses, or two scriptures. The first being Psalm 37, verse 16 and 17. And it reads like this: "It is better to be godly and have little than to be evil and rich. For the strength of the wicked will be shattered, but the Lord takes care of the godly." So you see how that language is distinctive. You see how he talks about he says, the evil and the godly, right? And there's certain things that are going to happen to those who are evil, and certain things are going to happen to the godly. The next passage we're going to look at is Proverbs 11:19, which says, "Godly people find life, evil people find death." So again, you see how David, and that's it's very important, because Proverbs was mostly written by Solomon following the death of his father David, and David is, of course, writing during his time as king. So I'm not aware that that Solomon even saw his father's writings. So if in fact he did not, isn't it striking that he's using the same language that his father did? I think that's purposeful, and I think it's to make a distinction between those who are at the very far end of the spectrum and those who are still centered in the spectrum, those who are sinful but decent enough because they refuse to corrupt themselves against God. They are the just, right? Proverbs, I think it's Proverbs 24:16. A just man falls 7 times, right? There is a distinction, and more likely than not, you, in the eyes of God, are not evil, because you have refused to do certain things because of your principles. And that is a very good thing, because when you allow yourself to not be restrained by philosophy, by principle, you run the risk of ruining yourself. And you see that all throughout Proverbs. And it's really trying to, Proverbs and the wisdom books are seeking to ensure that that does not happen to you.